Hey everyone! Tonight we're drifting back, slowly, quietly, into the medieval world. So dim the lights, let your shoulders drop, and try not to imagine the smell too vividly. Because tonight, instead of kings and queens on velvet cushions, we're following the vast majority of medieval people, the peasants, the ones who did all the work and received in return very little appreciation and a truly impressive number of aches. When people picture medieval peasants, they often imagine something vague, someone with a pitchfork, standing in a field, looking generally miserable. Which, to be fair, is not wrong, but it's incomplete. And tonight, we'll gently follow an ordinary peasant day from the moment the sun rises until exhaustion finally wins. So let's begin in the dark, because that's when their day starts. Before sunrise, before birdsong, before hope, a medieval peasant wakes up not because they want to, but because they must. Time is measured not by clocks, but by light, and every usable minute matters. They sleep on a rough straw mattress, usually shared, with a spouse, several children, and occasionally livestock, if the weather is bad or the house is small, which it usually is. The house itself is simple. One room, maybe two if they're doing well. Mud walls, a thatched roof that leaks just enough to keep things interesting. The floor is dirt. It remains dirt no matter how often you sweep it. There is no stretching, no easing into the morning, no 5 more minutes. You wake up stiff, sore, and already behind schedule. Clothes are put back on immediately. They were likely worn to bed anyway. Most peasants own only one set of clothes. Washing them is rare, difficult, and deeply seasonal. Breakfast is modest. If there is bread, that's good. If there is leftover pottage, a thick stew of grains and vegetables, that's even better. Meat is rare. Cheese appears occasionally, like a small miracle. And then, almost immediately, the work begins. For most peasants, this means agriculture. Farming is not a job, it is life itself. Men, women, and children all work the fields. Children are useful as soon as they can walk without falling over too much. In spring, there is plowing. Heavy wooden plows pulled by oxen that move at their own pace, which is never fast. The soil must be turned carefully. Too shallow, and crops fail. Too deep, and you've wasted energy you don't have. Seeds are planted by hand, every movement repeated hundreds of times. Backs bend, hands blister. Nobody complains because complaining doesn't change anything. Summer brings weeding, watching, guarding. Birds must be chased away, animals kept out. Children often serve as living scarecrows, standing in fields all day making noise. Harvest season is the most intense. Everyone works from first light to last. Sick or not, pregnant or not. Tired doesn't matter, because if the harvest fails, winter will remember. Lunch, if it happens, is brief. Bread again. Water or weak ale. Ale is safer than water, which is often contaminated. Even children drink it. It's low alcohol, but still, hydration is medieval style. Then back to work. And it's important to note, peasants are not working for themselves. They farm land owned by a lord, a man they may never see, but who owns their labor, their crops, and often their future. A large portion of everything they produce goes to him. Rent, taxes, church tithes, fees for using the mill, fees for marrying, fees for dying sometimes. Naturally, this makes life harder. By afternoon, fatigue sets in, but stopping early isn't an option. There's always more to do: fences to repair, tools to fix, animals to tend. Women often work the fields and manage the household. They fetch water, cook over open fires, spin wool, care for children, care for the sick, care for the elderly. Rest is not scheduled. It happens only when the body refuses to continue. As evening approaches, work shifts closer to home. Animals are brought in, tools stored, crops checked and protected. Dinner resembles breakfast, only colder and more tired. More bread, more pottage, occasionally onions, sometimes cabbage. If meat appears, it's usually salted and tough enough to test your commitment. Meals are eaten quietly, not because people are peaceful, but because talking takes energy. After dinner, there is still work. Clothes must be mended by firelight, shoes patched, grain ground by hand if the mill is unavailable or too expensive. And then, eventually, darkness settles fully. There is no artificial lighting beyond candles or rushlights, and both are precious. Most peasants go to sleep soon after dark because there is simply nothing else to do. Sleep comes quickly. Bodies are exhausted, but it's not always peaceful. Cold seeps in, insects bite, illness lingers. And tomorrow, it all begins again. Day after day, season after season, year after year. And this is the normal day, not the famine day, not the plague year, not the war passing through and taking everything. Just an ordinary medieval peasant life, quietly difficult, relentlessly repetitive, and largely invisible to history. So as we drift onward tonight, away from the fields, towards castles and crowns, it's worth remembering every royal feast, every velvet robe, every gold-plated bad decision was built on days like this, from dawn until sleep. Now that we've gently followed a single peasant day from dawn into exhausted sleep, let's not rush away just yet. Because medieval life wasn't measured in days the way ours is. It was measured in seasons, and those seasons had personalities. None of them were particularly kind. So let's gently widen the lens. The same peasant, the same small house, but now the year slowly turns, whether anyone is ready or not. Spring arrives first. In theory, spring is hopeful. In reality, spring is dangerous. Food supplies are lowest at this time. The previous year's harvest has been stretched thin all winter. Grain bins are nearly empty. Bread gets smaller. Meals get quieter. This period even has a name, the hungry gap, which sounds mild. It is not. People eat seed grain meant for planting. They eat roots dug from frozen soil. They eat things that are technically edible, but emotionally questionable. And yet, spring is when work intensifies. Fields must be prepared immediately. There's no waiting until everyone feels better. If you're weak, you work weakly. If you're sick, you work sick. If you're very sick, people hope you recover quickly, or at least don't infect too many others. Now that we've wandered through narrowed bloodlines and quietly compounding mistakes, let's slow down even further. Because before these fragile adults became kings and queens, they were children. Royal children. Which sounds enchanting and is complicated. A royal child is born into noise, church bells, announcements, prayers said loudly, just in case God wasn't paying attention. From the very beginning, their body is not their own. It is inspected, measured, declared acceptable, or quietly worrying. If the baby is male, relief spreads through the court. If female, congratulations are polite but restrained. If the baby appears weak, the room becomes very calm very quickly. Infancy is dangerous for everyone in the medieval world, but for royal children, survival is political. Wet nurses are hired, sometimes several, rotating in shifts. The mother may see the child daily or rarely, depending on custom and temperament. This distance is intentional. Attachment complicates succession. Toddlers are dressed like tiny adults, heavy fabrics, restrictive clothing, jewelry that serves no purpose except symbolism. They learn to sit still early, to be observed without reacting, to wave without enthusiasm. Play exists, but it is supervised, educational, purposeful. A toy sword, a doll that teaches future motherhood, games that reinforce hierarchy. By age 7, childhood begins quietly ending. Boys are handed over to tutors and weapons masters, girls to ladies-in-waiting and religious instruction. Education is uneven. Some children learn to read fluently, others barely manage signatures. What matters more than learning is obedience. Royal children are corrected constantly, not harshly, but persistently. Posture, tone, expression. Emotions are discouraged, except piety. Piety is acceptable. Illness is common. Fevers come and go. Stomachs fail regularly. Physicians hover. Leeches appear. Dietary advice contradicts itself. If a child survives into adolescence, they are considered fortunate. If they appear healthy, they are celebrated. Quietly, not too enthusiastically, because optimism is risky. And always, hovering just out of sight, is marriage. Which leads us gently forward. Royal marriages are not romances. They are negotiations, often beginning when both parties are still children, sometimes infants, occasionally not yet born. Contracts are drawn up, dowries calculated, borders adjusted on maps. The future bride and groom may not meet until the wedding, sometimes not until the wedding night, sometimes not even then, depending on circumstances. Age gaps are common, large ones. A teenage girl married to a man twice her age raises no eyebrows. A teenage boy married to an older woman causes murmurs, but is still acceptable. What matters is fertility and legitimacy. Weddings are elaborate, public, designed to reassure everyone watching that this arrangement is solid and permanent. The couple often looks nervous, or bored, or faintly confused. After the ceremony, attention shifts immediately to reproduction. Privacy is limited. Witnesses may even be present for the bedding, depending on region and paranoia level. If pregnancy does not occur quickly, concern sets in. Blame rarely falls on the husband, even when it should. Women endure scrutiny, herbal remedies, religious intervention. If children are born, the pressure eases slightly. If sons are born, the woman's position stabilizes. If daughters are born, encouragement continues, politely, persistently. If no children arrive, the marriage becomes fragile. Annulments are discussed, mistresses appear, rumors spread. And through it all, the spouses coexist. Some develop affection, many do not. Infidelity is common, accepted quietly in men, punished harshly in women. Emotional fulfillment is not expected. Duty is. And slowly, subtly, resentment builds, which expresses itself in the next stage of royal life: rule. By adulthood, many royals are exhausted before they begin ruling. Their lives have been controlled since birth, their choices limited, their education narrow, and now, suddenly, they're in charge. They inherit crowns during moments of grief, or crisis, or both. Councils surround them immediately. Advisors, relatives, men with strong opinions and selective loyalty. The ruler listens, nods, signs documents they may not fully understand. Some try to assert control, others retreat. Those with fragile health withdraw frequently. Illness becomes routine. Court schedules adjust around bad days. Temper flares or fades. Decisions are delayed or rushed. War is tempting. It offers clarity, an enemy, a distraction. Peace requires patience, and patience is rare. Taxes rise. Peasants grumble. Nobles argue. The ruler grows isolated. Trust narrows to a few individuals, often the wrong ones. Mistakes compound. Reputations form. History begins sharpening its language. Weak, indecisive, strange. Rarely does it mention that the system itself produced these outcomes. that generations of controlled marriages, sheltered childhoods, and absolute pressure tend to create fragile leaders. And eventually, inevitably, the ruler declines. Health worsens, energy fades, power slips quietly to others. And when death finally arrives, expected or sudden, the cycle resets. Now, gently, we reach the end of our wandering. Not with a dramatic collapse, not with trumpets or betrayals, just with the soft, inevitable slowing that history always arrives at in the end. So let's meet one last ruler. Not a specific one, because by now they all begin to blur together. A king or a queen, middle-aged by medieval standards, already tired. They were born into privilege so complete that nothing was ever optional. From the moment they could be named, their future was spoken for. They were examined as infants, educated cautiously, married strategically. They learned early how to sit still, how to listen without speaking, how to perform confidence while feeling none. By the time they wore the crown, they had already lived several lives, most of them not their own. Their health was never robust. It rarely is after generations of careful narrowing. Digestion troubles, joint pain, fevers that return with familiar persistence. Physicians hover. Treatments continue to involve bloodletting, prayer, and optimism. None of these help much. Their days are quiet now. Short audiences, long rests. Power flows around them rather than from them. Documents arrive already decided. They sign. They nod. Sometimes they remember a time when they felt sharper, more decisive. Sometimes they don't. Children have been produced, heirs identified, the next cycle prepared. And this is when history usually becomes unkind. Chroniclers summarize, reduce, label. Weak ruler, strange temperament, declining authority. They do not write about the long, narrow path that led here. They do not mention the cousins, the expectations, the quiet pressure from birth onward. They do not write about the peasants either, the ones still waking before dawn, still bending in fields, still carrying the weight of everything above them. Because history remembers names, not labor. And then, one evening, the ruler does not wake. Church bells ring, black cloth appears, court life pauses briefly. Funeral rituals unfold with precision, prayers, processions, statements of continuity. The body is laid to rest among ancestors who look increasingly alike. A new ruler is announced. Hope flickers, briefly, and life resumes. Fields are plowed, taxes collected, marriages negotiated. Nothing truly ends, it only shifts slightly. And that's where we can rest, with the understanding that medieval life, whether lived in mud or marble, was not designed for happiness. It was designed for continuation. And continuation, in its own quiet way, succeeded. So if your thoughts are drifting now, that's perfect. If names and dates are dissolving, even better. History doesn't mind being forgotten gently. It has endured far worse. Thank you for letting me keep you company tonight. I'll be here again whenever you need another slow walk through the past. Until then, sleep well.